Hello and welcome to the Creative Tech Podcast, where we discuss how technology can help you to be more creative. This podcast is made by the National Centre for Creativity Enabled by AI, which is a bit of a mouthful, so we call it CebAI for short. It's presented by the Director of CebAI, Professor Neil Maiden. Neil, who's in the studio today.
Today I'm really delighted to introduce our podcast guest. He is someone who has been an inspiration to many of us, one of the father figures of modern human-computer interaction, directly responsible for making our everyday digital tools more usable and more effective. He has contributed to several inventions that today we take for granted: the direct manipulation of objects and actions on our digital devices, the ubiquitous touchscreen keyboards on our smartphones, and the dynamic query sliders for a more insightful exploration of data. What's more, he's researched both the nature of creativity and new digital tools to support people's creative thinking. I am, of course, talking to Ben Shneiderman, distinguished university professor in the Department of Computer Science at the University of Maryland and founding director of its Human-Computer Interaction Laboratory. Ben, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Neil, for that generous invitation. I wish I was sitting next to you in London, but I'm here in beautiful Vancouver.
How's your summer been so far?
Mostly pretty good. It's lovely, cool, sunny, and great for exploring the scenic mountains and islands.
Oh, I'm jealous. So I'm going to start up with some questions related to some of our core work in CebAI. We're exploring how AI can augment rather than automate human creativity. One of your current projects is investigating human-centered AI, and you've developed a new framework for it. Can you tell us about this framework and, in particular, what's motivating it?
Right, Neil. Thank you. Yes, this has become my latest passion as I explore how we can guide the emerging notions about artificial intelligence into a productive form that ensures human control, even as we increase the levels of automation. That's the surprising twist of this HCAI framework. The old belief was that if you got more automation, you had less human control. And that was the belief for 40 years. But I got more and more concerned that was a problematic way and a mind-limiting approach. And so it grew on me that there was another way to think about it. And the breakthrough thought was to actually separate out and to say you could have high levels of human automation and high levels of human control and high levels of computer automation, that you could get both. That's the spirit of the time. So let's get both. And so that happens in the devices that we use for creative work, like taking pictures. Our digital cameras give the users control. They point the camera where they want. They compose as they wish. They zoom in and they click to get their decisive moment. At the same time, the AI is providing support by setting the aperture, by making the focus work, and by reducing hand jitter. So there's many ways that you get high levels of automation and high levels of human control. The distinction is to look for the things that are important for creative contributions, and then look for the things that AI or machine automation can do with high accuracy and reliability. That's the magic combination that people are finding more and more works in order to make creativity support tools and a variety of applications that are meaningful, from medical applications to transportation to legal decision-making, etc.
Your development of the framework would suggest that not all apps are as effective as taking photographs on our mobile phones. There's a gap there. There's a deficiency that you're seeking to address.
Right. I mean, so the framework is a way of thinking, and of course there are many small refinements. Sometimes you want to change the lighting that the machine has automatically selected, or you want to change the focal point. I think many users of digital cameras are sometimes annoyed because they're trying to focus on a person in the background, but the trees in the foreground become the focal objects. And so enabling the user even greater control when they want it becomes the formula to ensure creativity. Or another one that I've yet to find, here's an idea, which is sometimes I want to take a picture of a waterfall and I want a slow exposure so that I get this sort of flowing effect of the waterfall. I have yet to find a digital camera on a mobile phone that permits that. My larger digital camera does allow such things. So it's possible, but we need to embed those things in convenient forms. The other things digital camera design does that supports creativity is in advance of your picture, you can select the style of the photo and the filters, etc. And once you've taken the photo, you can edit it, you can crop it, you can change the lighting and the contrast and shadows, etc., etc. And then it's socially connected. That's another magic form of creativity, when you can send your creative work easily to colleagues, friends, and so on, and get feedback. It accelerates the process of creativity because you learn from others as to what they say. So those are the combinations of strategies that I think will increasingly become the norm.
And what's the reaction to the framework been so far? I mean, many software engineers and software developers are sometimes late to the party when it comes to the need to understand.
Sure. There are people who get it right away and they say, of course, why didn't I think of this? It's sort of, it opens their mind and they suddenly realize a new possibility. Others are skeptical and say, I don't get it. It seems inevitable and it seems necessary to have a zero-sum game. How can I have more automation and more control? It seems contrary to thinking. And it was to me as well. But that takes a while for a fresh idea to sink in, and that's still happening. So I don't expect an easy road, Neil. I think I'm going to be challenged by doing this, but I'm telling the story in papers I've published, and the book on human-centered AI will fill out the story with its publication by Oxford University Press in January 2022.
Excellent. Well, that's a book I shall look forward to reading and handing out to all of our centre staff. It's so central to our approach. Does the framework... sorry, go on, Ben.
To change the metaphors and language. This one's another real challenge, that the current language about intelligent agents and social robots and computers as teammates and autonomous systems, that's the dominant language. And I spent the last few days at two different conferences making the case that that's not the way to think about design, that there are better ways to think about design. Oh, you're welcome to think about it that way. But I would say stronger ways are the language that I use, maybe less charismatic, but I think more appropriate, is super tools, active appliances, telebots, and control centers. And those suggest a clarity of human control over systems, and that's what's I think needed in the change of thinking. That will be a tough change as well, because there's such a strong belief in computers inevitably being teammates and social robots. Yet the history has shown otherwise, and I think the future is bright for super tools, active appliances, telebots, and control centers.
Does your framework drill down on how a super tool might support our users? Does it become prescriptive in any way to help designers?
I try to. I think that's it. We have a lot of discussion about ethics for AI and grand principles, and my effort is to shift from that to the design thinking necessary for how to accomplish it. What are the guidelines that specify how to do it? So some of them are really simple. They're often visual designs like the digital camera, and they do things like they give you a preview of what the picture will look like before you take it. Remember, not too far in the past, when you took a picture, you didn't really get to see what it looked like till you got your prints back from the store. And now we as we move our camera, zoom in and compose it, we see immediately what the picture will look like. And that kind of feedback is what the super tool should be. Similarly, for GPS navigation systems, you choose a route, it gives you a set of choices, shows you the estimated times, even where the congestion is. Lots of AI at work, but you're in control. You choose the route, and off you go. And that notion I capture in a simple guideline. I try to be compact and pithy, so it's preview first, okay? Select and initiate, then manage execution. And that's a formula you may recognize, because I think you know my earlier work about information visualization that suggested a similar principle. Overview first to get to see the whole territory of the data, zoom and filter, then details on demand. And the central notion of that was the primacy of the human user. That is, the human gets to see the overview. The human selects what to zoom in on and what to filter out, and then that person clicks to get the details on demand. So those are two of the principles, and the new set of 8 principles for CebAI joins what I call the 8 golden rules of user interface design many years ago, which have propagated quite widely, and I hope this new set of rules will continue to clarify what designers need to do as they make systems that really ensure human control while increasing the levels of automation.
That's fascinating. Thank you, Ben. Have you thought about how these 8 principles might be applied to what are often called digital creativity support tools that may be supporting people in work and more focused tasks than taking a photograph? Have you given much thought to that?
Yes, that's always on my mind. We often think about task-oriented things of practical work in arranging transportation or doing medical care. But yes, I'm always aware of the creative work that's potential for the artist who makes visual designs, the videographer who's preparing a video, the musician, the screenwriter. All those different creative industries could be facilitated by these processes that give them a clarity of control that particularly let them explore alternatives. I think the key to creativity support, well, one of the keys is to rapidly explore alternatives, to be able to see many possibilities quickly, try them out, and see how they compare and how they work out. Different cropping, different shading, different lighting, different music, different rhythms, different ways that you can explore. That's the essence to me of supporting human creativity, to allow that exploration, and also the social process of easily sharing what you've done to get feedback. So a great stimulant for creativity is the fact that YouTube or other mechanisms let people share their creative work with. It used to be, only Hollywood could reach 1 million people, and now high school kids make projects that reach 1 million people, and the feedback you get from that is a great accelerator of your understanding of creativity. So I think that's really another important part. We must remember that people are social, and we want to support their social connections. That's why we have art exhibits and music performances, because we want to be together, we want to applaud, and we want to look and see the reactions of everyone around us. And so that social process is really important.
Fascinating again. Focusing more on digital creativity support, you've developed some in the past, as high-profile publications, our centres seeking to develop a new generation of these technologies using certain AI techniques. Have you got thoughts about what kinds of AI technologies and techniques work well or might work well for digital creativity support?
Well, it depends what kind of creativity you're supporting. I mean, there's the scientist's creativity that you might be supporting, and there's the artist's creativity, and the designer and the engineer. Those are all different forms, or the the physician's creativity, the nurse's creativity. We need to understand and make sure that more people are more creative more often. That's what we want to support. At every level, we want to explore that capacity to support creativity in fresh ways. And by making it easy to do those things, to try many alternatives, we give people the chance to explore and then to capture what they're doing. A lot of people are quite, well, shall we say, shy or lacking in confidence. And the fact that they can do something creative and they can share it with a friend is the big breakthrough. That's what digital cameras changed. 30 years ago, maybe 10% of the population were, serious amateurs. 1% were quite professional, and a lot of people just never took photos. But that's shifted completely, in that we have a large number of people taking photos and sharing them. And the photos they take are pretty good. They're not all great, but they learn from that, and they get the feedback, and they see why something's lacking in clarity, why the lighting is from behind and therefore puts the face in the shadow. And so people come to learn by doing, and that's what we want to support. Now, that's at the novice level. At the expert level of artist and master and creative, we have the same idea, but they want to push the boundaries even more. And so they may push past what current systems allow people to do. And so we need the tools to enable a second level of creativity, which is creativity about creativity tools. That is ways in which programming can be made more accessible to more people. Yes, my students are great in building new tools and new software, but they're, again, that 1% of the population. And the growing family of tools, sometimes called end-user programming, or other ways in which people can actually change the tools that they wind up using, I think will remain a small but important trend, because those ideas will spread, and what people will then post is not just their photos, but their new tools for making photography, and that other people will benefit from their creative tools.
Now, fascinating. We were talking about end-user development and end-user programming for creativity yesterday. Coming back to the earlier point about self-belief, it's something that we've observed, for example, with journalists, where we put what we think are reasonably effective creativity support tools in front of journalists. And there is clearly a perception that they don't see themselves or their work as creative. So there's issues with creative self-belief, which are coupled to how the technology is used. Do you have views on how we can boost or bolster people's creative self-belief, which is often drilled out of us in the education system?
Yeah, I think that's been raised by many people as an issue, that we all want to return to the state of being a child and being free to explore and play. And yes, some of that is needed. So I think those strategies and just the social environment that encourages people to try it and not worry about failure, just, to go out and explore, try possibilities, look at what you've done, think about it. And you may have some AI tools which will then give feedback or comments about, oh, this portrait's good, but the face is in dark and shadow, or the background's too bright, or the distractions are off. And those things may help give people some feedback. And the feedback complements the feedback they get from people and friends. Sometimes it's a creative idea to put the face in the shadow. And maybe that represents a mood, a depressed mood, an angry mood. And so there may be a purpose to it. But people will become more aware of these principles. And I think that's the goal, to make more people more creative more often. So I like your point about how do you, and I don't know more about your struggles with journalists as to why. I mean, sometimes the work of journalism is very uncreative. It's just happened at a sports event or a financial report, which can be translated and done by computer, and those things will be done by computers. But the creative sports journalist will make it exciting. Will find a way to tell a story that's more than the numbers and more than the beginning, middle, and end. It will focus on the personality, the challenges, the failures, the hopes, the dreams, the things that make us very special humans. I do believe people are special. People are not computers. Computers are not people. And we have to remember that people are different. And I think that is a very special case of what people are. Oh, yes, computers are special too, but in a very different way. They're just different categories. And those who make the mistake of suggesting that computers are becoming like people or will in the future, I think have got it wrong. I think that idea is severely underestimates the remarkable capabilities of people that I celebrate. Yes, computers will become remarkable, but in other ways they become. They can invert matrices a lot faster than I can. That's not a problem. They can do all kinds of wonderful things, but the design of those technologies should be in support and in control by people.
Do you think we're reaching a point where there's a step change in how technology can support human creativity in different endeavors? Do you think we're either at a point or going through a phase of change, or am I too optimistic there?
I guess I've heard that argument many times, and maybe, but I tend to see things as more evolutionary. I see precedents to ideas emerging. I see ideas catching on or not, and things spreading. Some things do spread more rapidly. It's sometimes remarkable what can happen. You mentioned, one of my small contributions was the idea of the link, that certain words are highlighted in a paragraph and you click on that to go somewhere. And, we struggled to put that out for a few years, and Tim Berners-Lee saw that and put it in his Spring '89 manifesto for the web. Oh, yes, we call them embedded menus, and he called them hot links or hotspots. So sometimes a name works, but then he put it into the web, which made a big difference because early versions of web browsers had very more complex ways of following links. Link ID is an old one, but the visual interface that we developed of this simple light blue highlighting, we tried red highlighting, and that was clearly visible, but people just didn't read the content. But the light blue was a good balance. And so, Tim Berners-Lee put that into the web by 91. By 93, it became widespread and now quite universal that people are surprised that anyone had to invent that. So it's that kind of idea spread. On the other hand, an idea that I called tree maps from 1991. I thought in 2 years that would be on everybody's laptop. But it took a longer time, and it was only in 2013 that Microsoft put tree maps into Excel, giving it widespread use. And other tools for visualization began to use it, but the larger tools took a while till people accepted a new idea. So I've come to see that the uptake of ideas is very varied. And I don't yet have a good theory of how to spread things faster, but there's a creative idea that you might want to pursue, or your research colleagues might want to pursue. How do you spread an idea? How do you get people to adopt the idea that vaccines are really a good way to stop COVID? How do you overcome the resistance that people have and the preservation of old beliefs? Now, some old beliefs are worth keeping, but we need to understand how new ideas can really generate productive outcomes.
Sure, absolutely. A degree of patience will be needed. Well, you mentioned this idea of spreading breakthroughs. In our CebAI Centre, we are committed to the widespread uptake of its applied research in different sectors and industries. We've been developing a model for that. And the proposal that I wrote to establish and fund the centre made reference to your ABC model, Achieving Breakthrough Collaborations. You described this model as a manifesto for senior researchers and government policymakers about how to respond to contemporary problems, apply new tech, and promote increased ambition. Do you think technology researchers are doing enough to promote the scale and results of their research in the context of this framework or model?
Thank you, Neil, for mentioning that. I remember vividly When that book was published in 2016, I visited and spoke at City University London.
Yeah, no, I remember
wonderful
too.
lunch with you and others in your team. We discussed those issues, but the ABC is, as you say, achieving breakthrough collaboration, but also applied and basic combined. And it's a few other things too, like the playful one that says, ask better questions, which slightly bridges from the ABC, but I think the idea is there. So, the ways to get things going, first of all, is to work on real problems with real partners. That's the applied and basic combined. But academics partner with people in industry and medicine that have real problems. Those papers, which are signaled by having a co-author who's not an academic, those papers generate 5 to 8 times as many citations in the scientific literature.
Wow.
It's a dramatic difference. And that was a stunning result that I found after publishing the book and began to investigate citation patterns in the US, in the UK, for top institutions, for private and public, and for all institutions. And the result is quite durable. That works on, research that focuses on real problems with signified by having a partner from industry, government, or medicine, or so on. Those papers have a big influence. So that's an important thing. Work on real problems. And if you work on real problems, but keep an academic focus, you get both. You get what I call the twin win. You get a breakthrough theory, which you publish in papers, and you get a solution that's ready for widespread dissemination. So I think that strategy works. And that's why I called it a roadmap for administrators and for students. I've been heartened by the nice emails I've gotten from students who tell me about how much that influenced their thinking. Now, this breaks from academic traditions, which say work on academic ideas, work on theory, publish your papers, and so on. And the idea of collaborations, teamwork, is also fresh, but has dramatically changed. In the last 50 years, we've gone from scientific papers and research papers being 50% single author to being only 10% single author. That means 90% of papers now are written by teams of 2 or more. And so that teamwork is one of the secrets of creativity. Diverse perspectives on a problem really help you see better solutions.
Do you think we're doing enough of that? Do we have enough teamwork happening in most of our funded research projects? I mean, the UK is moving slowly towards a greater recognition of what they call impact as part of the research excellence framework.
It's happening. It's very hard to track, except in the publication records there. But yes, I know many universities still award tenure and recognition for individual work, and work done in teams is somehow seen as less. But I think it's a way to go. Many universities are changing their tenure and promotion processes to give some recognition. But you're right, that still will take a while.
More patience is required. I think that's an overarching outcome of this discussion.
I'm an impatient young man, Neil. You know that. I can see.
Well, another 50 years. I'm going to come back to a feature that we have in our podcast now, which is within CebAI, our purpose is to build technology that supports and inspires people to be their most creative when problem solving, collaborating, and interacting every day. We call it creativity on demand. In this regular feature, I have 3 questions to test your creativity on demand. First question is, what is the single most important thing you require in order to be creative?
Yeah. I would say, of course, I'll say there are 2.
You can have 2.
One is the discovery and exploration of previous and related work. The tools are pretty good. They've gotten dramatically better in my lifetime. From the days when you had to send a postcard to someone to ask them to mail you a printed version of their paper, which maybe took a month if it worked at all, to the time where if a student arrives and we have a fresh idea, within 3 hours, we've digested the literature, found the 10 most important papers, the 5 most important researchers. We're sending them an email and we say, we have this idea that extends your work. What do you think? And so we're off and running. So the capacity to discover previous work's really important. And, that's still the bottleneck in that is we have the search tools that give us the papers we want or the previous work, but it really takes a long time to read and digest them. And tools for summarization of those papers that show me which papers are all of the same class, which one is something fresh and new, those would be helpful. So discovery and exploration or sense-making tools, as they're called, is one. And the other one I've mentioned already is the capacity to try different things easily. That when I'm writing a paper, I want to be able to write it and easily manipulate it and try different ways of presenting it. I like the little assistances even of synonym finders. I find myself coming to that, quite often of, I use a word and I think about it. I say, it's not quite right. And I can't find the other word, but the synonym finder is easily accessible. It pops up, gives me 8 choices. And there I go. I find a word, or it leads me to a new idea and another word and another word and another word. And so little tools like synonym trackers or finders are a good one. But also, I need reminders of how to write, how to organize a story. And you asked before about how researchers could get their work to be more well adopted. Better writing is one of them. Narrative style and presentations that make a clear description of what the problem is and what previous solutions were, how your solution is different and what moves it forward, and what are the problems with it, would be really effective. I find the medical literature has shifted productively towards a very structured abstract for papers, which forces writers to have a clear and compact and systematic approach to it. Is very helpful. Sometimes structure facilitates creativity because it reminds you of things that you forgot. Sometimes structure limits creativity, but I would like to have better tools to help me make the case, tell the story. And then, I've written a lot of papers, and I still find it a challenge to rewrite them for public presentation. How do I simplify, clarify, use simple language? In working on this book, I had to shift the 3 academic papers into a book form, which I hope would be more widely readable. And I struggled with that. That's been a challenge for me, Neil. So I need your tools to help me help me write better and tell the story in a way that's more compelling. I admire journalists who open up with a compelling story, follow through, weave an argument, bring voices in and out, and tell the story in a compelling way. I really like that. And although my parents were journalists, I still struggle to find the journalistic storytelling angle for the research that I want to present.
Well, if I have that tool, I will be using it first because I likewise marvel at the ability of journalists to use just a few words to convey so much meaning whilst I scramble around with more complex paragraphs. Well, I'm only going to give you one answer for the next 2 questions, I think. In fact, you may have answered the second one already. If you could create any tech or app that could do anything real or imaginary, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it's the discovery and sense-making facilitation of summarization of large bodies of literature. Okay. There are more than 2 million scientific papers published each year, and Google and other sources are very effective in me finding things. But when I find things, I still find 100 or 1,000 of them, and I need to distill them down into the 10 and the 5 that I should read right now. And so understanding that, and sometimes, understanding the particular paper and what's new in that paper is a challenge because I don't have the background when I go to a new area. And I need to develop the foundational side of things so that I can understand what the creative edge is. That's still a challenge.
Perfect. And the last question is, if you could remove one thing from the world in order to make humans more creative, what would you remove or bin?
I would stop the movement to social robots, intelligent agents, autonomous, and so on. I would remove that belief and restore. Let me make it positive. I would restore the belief in human creative capabilities and support the ways that people can be creative. The goal of human-centered AI is to amplify, augment, empower, and enhance people.
Perfect. A lovely positive ending. Well, listen, Ben, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you as ever. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Neil.
And thank you to our audience for listening to this Creative Tech Podcast, a regular series of conversations to shed light on issues of creativity and how technology can enable more effective ways for humans to be creative. All of the links that Ben has referenced today will be in the show notes. Please take time to like the podcast and leave a review. It really does make a difference. You can also follow us on Twitter @CebAI or on LinkedIn, Creativity Enabled by AI.